Baitcast reels are tremendous tools, but so often the learning curve to figure one out or to master one can be a little bit difficult. So I want to go over some things that are just going to help you land more fish and be more efficient when using your baitcast reels. Number one is setting them up, right? We don't want to get that dreaded backlash. And if you look around on YouTube, you're going to find different ways to set it up. This is the way that I like to do it, and you can see if this works out for you. Number one is make sure that when you put that lure on, I am going to go ahead and take the brake, okay, the brake system. First of all, if you've got a dual braking system with centrifugal and magnetic, those centrifugal brakes I like to keep at the halfway point. In other words, half of them are on, half of them are off, and make sure you set them opposites, all right? So you want the little pins, the ones on opposite sides are the ones that you're going to pair up. So I like half of them on. Then I take the external brake here, whether it's magnetic or whatever it might be, turn it all the way off. Now with my lure on the line, I'm going to go ahead and depress the thumb bar and watch that lure drop. My goal is to get it to drop slowly, and when it hits the surface of the water, it just hits the water and then stops without over spooling. So I'm going to tighten my spool tension knob while I'm doing that. I'm going to keep hitting the thumb bar, letting it drop, and keep tightening that spool tension knob until the lure hits the water and then stops without over spooling. What you're doing is you're eliminating a wide side-to-side movement on your spool. So that's another way you can think about it. You don't want that spool to be too loose and you don't want it to be too tight. Well, once I get that drop right where I want it, then I will go back to my brake system here on the outside and put it at the 50% mark, and that is where I will start to fish, and I will adjust it up or down from there. Most of the time I will start to loosen that brake system. And here's the key part that a lot of times anglers will forget about. If you snip that lure off and you change weights drastically, you're going to want to repeat this process. And once you get it down, it doesn't take very long at all. But if you take the time to set up your reel like that, I think you're going to eliminate your backlash problems by a lot. The next one that is often overlooked is the drag system right here on the reel. Depending on the type of fishing you're doing, you want to think about the drag kind of in two ways. If you're using single hook lures, and this would include your Texas rigs, jigs, these types of things, some of those heavier hooks, I like to keep the drag cranked down pretty tight. It takes a lot of energy transfer to get that hook to penetrate into the fish's mouth, and if we have a little bit of slip on those hard hook sets, usually when it comes to the better fish, we're not going to get them buttoned up like we want to, and oftentimes we don't realize it until that fish flips off. Now when you're using lures with treble hooks, this is where I like to take that drag and back it off a little bit. I want some slip. I've had multiple times, because I'm a slow learner, where I had nice fish on a crankbait and then I get it up to the boat and it does that dive right there at the last minute and the fish pulls off. I lost my personal best largemouth on Lake Toho in Florida on a jerkbait because I had my drag set too tight. Another way to think about it is set your drag when you're using lures with trebles for what you think the potential is for that body of water. Being a northern Illinois angler most of the time, when I went down to Florida, didn't even cross my mind to change my drag on that jerkbait rod for the potential that's in that lake. We don't have double-digit fish on my home lakes. Down there, any cast, you might get a good one, and I paid for it because of a drag mistake on my part. And I also get asked all the time about gear ratio, and gear ratios over the years have gotten so much faster. It is hard to find what I consider low gear ratio reels at 5.2, 5.1 to 1 range. They're getting very difficult to come by, and I remember when a 7.5 was considered a burner that was really fast. So my general answer when anglers ask about gear ratio is if I'm using something where the presentation is over quickly, let's say I'm flipping brush and that part of the presentation that I'm using is right there around a stump, around a brush pile, I present the lure, then I want to get it back to me for the next cast. That is where I really like to use a higher gear ratio reel so I can make more casts over the course of a long day. I also like a higher gear ratio reel when I'm using something like a Carolina rig. For whatever reason, at least for me, when I catch fish on a Carolina rig, so often they run towards me. They come towards the boat, and that higher gear ratio helps me to catch up to them. As a general rule of thumb, when I'm using deeper diving crankbaits, then I put on a slower gear ratio reel, and any more slow tends to be in that 6.2, 6.3 type of a range. If I'm burning crankbaits, well then I'm not afraid to use something with a little bit higher gear ratio. But as far as very generalization, that's how I look at it. And hey, if you want to watch a video that talks about 4 tactics to really find fish quicker in these dog days of summer, go ahead and check this one out right here. And make sure that you go out and encourage someone today. You never know how you might just change their life. For the Bass Fishing Life, I'm your host, Steve Rogers.